I'm kind of from the school of common sense, and I believe you always treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't do. So when Stephen and I connected, Stephen is definitely more outside the box than I am. He would go way outside the box, and I'd bring him back maybe to closer to reality, and then we'd, have fun with it and see where we would go. But no, I mean, I was a science teacher. No, my education came just from watching and listening. I had the good opportunity to be part of many negotiations for collective bargaining. So you learn things there. It's just been, I've always been intrigued by education. So Stephen, as I said, Stephen deserves a lot of credit here because he's the outside the box thinker, and I would bring him back. So we were a good frickin' frack, let's put it that way. One thing we did at each training camp, along with memos like that, was we would brand each season so that brand meant something only to our group. It didn't mean anything to anybody else. So this is just a simple thing, but like, for example, we make up little T-shirts with the brand on. Every memo we sent out all year long had the brand on. Every video we sent out had the brand on. We had brands like, what will I do? Okay, what that meant to each one of us was, what will I do to make myself a better teammate? Will I get my fitness better? Will I know the rules better? Will I understand the intent of the rule? And we had other ones like one season, the whole group wasn't real good at taking charge of scrums when everybody comes together. So our slogan the next year was take charge, and we talked about that. Here's another silly one, or not a silly one, but guys got a little sloppy at expenses. So one of the years we said, it's all about details. I was fortunate enough to get to the Stanley Cup a few times, but the game that sticks out that sort of defines my career was it was in 1994, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Vancouver Canucks against the New York Rangers. And it was quite a series with the Rangers never winning since 1954. And, of course, you've got East Coast, West Coast, Canada, United States, lots of things going on. And it was great to get that assignment. I got to do Game 7. It ended up 3-2, so it was a tight game, but it was an exciting game. And that's sort of the special one that you always, you dream about having, but it doesn't happen that often. When I did it, it was only the third time in the modern era, which would be considered since 1965, that a seventh game had occurred in the Stanley Cup Finals. So that was pretty special.
And now, episode 22, letter T, teamwork. Join hosts Dana Pappas and Nate Acosta with special guest Terry Gregson on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas here with my co-host Nate Acosta. And as a huge hockey fan myself, I am super excited to introduce our first guest representing hockey officials, some of the toughest adjudicators in all the land.
On today's episode, we are covering the letter T, and our topic for today is teamwork, an essential element of officiating. We will talk not only about the team element of officiating, but also the importance of setting up your team for success.
Our very special guest today is Terry Gregson, who served as an NHL referee from 1979 through 2004 and NHL Director of Officiating from 2009 through 2013. During his career, he refereed 1,427 regular season games, 158 playoff games, 9 Stanley Cup Finals, and 1 All-Star game. And if that wasn't enough, he also worked the 1996 World Cup of Hockey. I am exhausted just reading all of those games.
Absolutely. And Terry, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. Before we get into the topic of the day, could you tell us a little bit about your officiating journey, how you got your start, and your road to the NHL?
Well, it kind of started out as I thought it was punishment, but it ended up being a great opportunity. I was raised in a small farming community in Ontario, Canada, and my dad ran minor hockey. And when I turned 13, he woke me up Saturday morning at 5:30 and said, I can't get anyone to referee the 6 a.m. games anymore. So he said, you're it. And, like you can imagine, 13-year-old on a Saturday morning at 5:30 thinks this isn't very good. But I got out there. I started to do those games. I started to enjoy the fact that I got on the ice a lot more than I did as a player. I mean, everyone starts out wanting to be the player, and I still was pursuing that, still had the hockey bug. But this became an extension for being on the ice. So I continued that. I did the kids hockey and I refereed high school hockey while I was playing. I continued to play through university. And then after I graduated from my first degree, my Bachelor of Science, I went over to Europe and played hockey for a year. And while I was there, I got my international license in refereeing as well. Came back, took my teaching degree, and decided my playing days were over. I had reached the limit of my skill set as a player. And so I was very fortunate to have some very good mentors for the next couple of years, and they were able to show me the way. And over the course of the summer, I had a pretty cool job for hockey. I was a power skating instructor, so I got to travel quite a bit just teaching skating. So through that, you make many contacts, you learn things. And as I continued to officiate, I got scouted, just like players get scouted, asked to go to a training camp, took a year's leave of absence from teaching, and 38 years later, I retired from the National Hockey League. So that was sort of my journey to get to the National Hockey League. Then the trick was staying there.
I think that's a trick in all sports. And, hockey is such a unique sport because you have to have that skill of skating. That's something that's just so unique to the hockey. Like, you've got to be a skilled skater. You can't be mediocre at it and think that you're going to be able to be in the league. That's for sure. So your whole playing career makes a lot of sense. So as we talk about that, you obviously had a very long career in hockey officiating. Was there a sport that you never officiated, but you really wish that you would have?
Well, along the way, I did officiate lacrosse and I officiated softball and all kinds of intramural sports, but I got exposed to a sport later in life that I thought that would have been pretty cool to be involved in, and that was polo. Like hockey, you have to have a skating skill. In polo, you have to have the ability to ride a horse and make the calls. And I was very interested. I worked with the U.S. Polo Association, did some consulting about standard of enforcement and things like that, but they call it hockey on horseback. So maybe that was my affinity to watching it. I never did attempt it, but it certainly was intriguing, and it's a contact sport and lots of action as well. Just that polo field's 9 football fields, so it's a little more open than hockey.
Just a skosh, yeah, that not... the whole world of equestrian sport is fascinating. I had spoken at a U.S. equestrian event last year, and I think the cool thing is, though, you were a hockey official, you were talking about some of the other sports you did, you wanted to try out polo, but when you get a group of officials together in any sport, at the end of the day, it's still just officiating, and I love that common thread. It doesn't matter what sport, it's just we get together and we all have the same pain points and the same successes, so it's just, I love hearing that, and I love that polo was your sport you never officiated but wanted to. That's cool.
Well, it was interesting. I remember the first meeting I went to, just to get introduced, I sat at the back of the room and I closed my eyes and listened to what they were talking about. And I thought I was at the back of our training camp because they were talking about holding and interference and things like that, which are parts of the game of hockey as well. So, but you're right. That's what I always loved about going to conferences. You think you're the unique one in a unique bubble, but everybody's in the same boat.
Absolutely.
Terry, during your tenure as an on-ice referee, what were some of the most memorable moments you had?
Well, I think like anybody, after spending, probably 11 years in the minor sports, to get to do your very first hockey game at the top level is pretty exciting. And there were some pretty big players in that first game. It was Hartford against the Los Angeles Kings. And I was fortunate, of course, they put me with 2 very senior people. Back then, it was just 1 referee and 2 people on the lines, and now it's 2 referees and 2 people on the lines. But that was pretty memorable that first night, and standing out at center ice and thinking about all the little cold arenas that you were in for many, many years. And finally, I'm out here and, wow, this arena's bright and there's a lot of people yelling at me. So that was kind of interesting. Anytime you get to the Stanley Cup Finals, that's pretty special because you're being accepted not only by the hockey world, but most importantly by your evaluators and mentors and managers. So I was fortunate enough to get to the Stanley Cup a few times, but the game that sticks out that sort of defines my career was it was in 1994, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, Vancouver Canucks against the New York Rangers. And it was quite a series with the Rangers never winning since 1954. And of course, you've got East Coast, West Coast, Canada, United States, lots of things going on. And it was great to get that assignment. I got to do Game 7. It ended up 3-2, so it was a tight game, but it was an exciting game. And that's sort of the special one that you always, you dream about having, but it doesn't happen that often. When I did it, it was only the third time in the modern era, which would be considered since 1965, that a seventh game had occurred in the Stanley Cup Finals. So that was pretty special.
That's amazing. As a hockey fan, Game 7, there's nothing like it. Postseason in hockey is it's just cool. It's exciting, and listening to that and just imagining, I'd love to go back and find that game somewhere just to see it, because that's tremendous. I love hearing about that. So Terry, we're going to jump into the topic of the day, which is of course teamwork. So as a hockey officiating crew, how important is teamwork?
Well, teamwork is really the foundation, in my mind, to the whole situation, because everyone has to be on the same page. Are we always on the same page? No, we're not. But that's the job of management and coaches and communicating and so on. So when it comes to teamwork, in our situation, we do not work in crews because we have certain assignment restrictions. So people who work the lines tend to be more regionalized. The referees, basically, we have a rule where a referee is never in one city more than 3 times in a year, and he doesn't see a team more than 5 times in a year. And if a referee in our business works 73 hockey games, so you move around a lot. And so therefore, we all travel kind of independently. You might work with somebody once or twice in 2 weeks and then never see them again the rest of the year. So teamwork is really crucial. So that's why our training camp is so crucial to us. And we had to really build that framework based around the standard of enforcement. And for us, we were given a golden opportunity, which was really, it arose out of a bad situation. In 2004, 2005, the NHL did not operate because we had a lockout. And during that time, there was no hockey. And so during that time, Stephen Walkham was hired as the head of officiating, and I came in as his assistant. And we took a look at things and we said, okay, what do we need to do here to really get that consistency that we're always looking for? So out of 2005, we came up with new rules, new ways to play the game, better flow, everything. So we had to be ready. We had to adapt. We had to be ready to hit the ground running and do the best thing for the game. So we thought, okay, what we need to do here is build a culture of a collective mentality. And so how are we going to do that? And I always love, there is a definition of community. And community says when you are protected, you are connected, and you are respected. So we felt as a management group, if we were there for our people, we could protect them as much as possible. If we communicate and educate them, then we are connected to them. And out of that, if we get consistency, our group will be respected. So what we really started to do was think, okay, let's make sure that we understand, that everybody understands their role, so there's a pride. So who they are, okay, you're an official in the National Hockey League officiating group. And what they do, okay, they're there to maintain the integrity of the game. And the final step was who they do it with. So that's when you start to build that teamwork. And one of the slogans we developed at that point in time was less about me and more about we. And that really got us going in the direction of teamwork. And then the next thing was to really develop a standard of enforcement, which in my mind means the game's integrity. And we had to really give good guidance there. And we came up with slogans like many crews, one standard. And we told the management, you're there for support, not surveillance, because so often management gets looked on as, well, you're just there to, check the boxes and find fault with me. We wanted our management team to be there for support, not surveillance, as I said. And we referred to it as success teaching, as opposed to, situations that arise. And so the standard of enforcement, some people might say, well, what the heck's a standard of enforcement? I thought maybe what I'd do is just read to you a little memo that we sent out to the people at the start of the season, just to give them the sense, because, you're off July and August, you're getting your body in shape, but the mind maybe can wander a little bit. So you have to get them back on track. So here's like a couple of paragraphs. I'll shorten it up. But the standard is the league's enforcement policy and the foundation from which we build on. It represents a team concept which each of us has a role in upholding. Over the past several seasons, we have worked hard to create a strong foundation, particularly in the areas of fairness and safety. We must continue to work hard to maintain this good work while we also incorporate new elements into the game. Calling the standard period to period and game to game leads consistency through to the last game of the season. Calling a consistent standard for 1,312 games is no easy task, but it is a responsibility we are entrusted with and a goal that only this team can achieve. So that was the type of thing we would talk to them about when it comes. Now, there's a lot there, and I understand, don't get me wrong. I was only dealing with, between management and officials, 100 people. So that's pretty small sample size compared to what some of your groups are looking at. But I still feel that from 10,000 feet, that type of message can be sent down and then sent down and then sent down again. And so, we had to say, how are we going to achieve this consistency? So we started to come up with, as I mentioned, you come up with a covenant or an idea. Okay, what's the right thing for the game? We came up with buzzwords like fair, safe, see, react, reward, skill, consequence. And these all meant something to every one of us. I could say a word and it meant a whole paragraph to our people. And then people could sit around the room pre-game, post-game, and talk in a very related manner, so that we had to get that common commitment to the standard by giving them tools to understand it and apply it.
Wow. And I think what I take away from all of this is that the teamwork started really at the top, the management teams, you started to work together as a team, and then you took it to the next level, and they started to buy into that concept and work as a team. And so it's just this tree of teamwork that you guys started from the top. And so for all you listeners out there, I mean, leadership does start at the top, and everything that falls under that will follow. So, man, what a powerful way to start that. But those buzzwords and the things that you talk about, those are the things that build trust, camaraderie, respect, and really just an understanding of each other, because we're all striving for the same goal. Man, what a powerful message.
Seriously.
It takes a lot of persistence too. Like, you can't just say it once and then hope that they hung on to it. And that was one of Stephen's roles when he was at the top, and then when I was at the top, to continually be reminding these people of these concepts that we've come up with and how to apply them. So you have to give them a sort of a discipline in terms of how do we develop to the stage we want to get to, and then you want to give them education. So you want to give them direction through education and through experience, which is mentorship. We can talk about a little later and all that. But at the end of the day, it becomes about, accountability to each other. So if you're on this team, you have to be accountable to yourself, to your teammates, and most of all, to the game. And so that becomes sort of something that, it has to grow as well. And when someone isn't accountable or starts to go off on a tangent way out there, you got to bring them back. If you don't bring them back, then other people see it and you lose that guideline. Once again, I said I'm dealing with a smaller sample size than a lot of people, but if you break your associations down to smaller groups, you can give them good discipline and good direction. And from discipline, I mean how to develop them.
Man, there was so much packed into that, Terry. That was like master's level coursework right there. But I think that some of the takeaways that I had, first of all, one of the reasons, and grew up in the desert, really had no reason to like hockey because where was there ever snow, ice, or anything cold in New Mexico? When I started dating Ed, my husband, he's the one who turned me on to hockey. And I will tell you, the excitement of the sport was obviously one of the things that hooked me. One of my first games was a Stadium Series game outside at Soldier Field where it snowed for like 100 hours, and it was amazing. But I will tell you that one of the things that I love the most about the sport is that team and the we over I. And I would listen to interviews with players, with coaches, and it was always about that greater good. You never heard I did this and I did that. It was always we and team. So hearing you talk about that on the officiating side, I'm not at all surprised because it just seems very prevalent in the sport. But as you were reading that statement that your people had gotten when you're in that position, I'm just thinking, man, I want to copy and paste that and send that to officials everywhere, because everything that you said is exactly what associations at any level and in any sport should be looking to do. And that hit home with me on such a deep level. I'm definitely going to go back and listen to this and take a whole bunch of notes, because that was a thing of beauty for sure. So thank you for sharing that with us and with our listeners. That was outstanding.
And as Nate mentioned, the whole thing about standard of enforcement, that was our common objective. And out of that, reading that type of thing to general managers at meetings and things like that, they started to see what our focus was. We weren't just this mysterious bunch of people that came around to screw up hockey games. And what really, at the end of the day, there starts to be a little more trust. Like, these people really are working hard at this. And and our people saw a significant sort of response from teams and coaches and players and things like that. And the old line, collaboration moves at the speed of trust. As we built more trust amongst our individuals to build a strong team, the collaboration just took off, and the trust amongst our people was much better.
And that's the best thing. Talking to you over the years and talking to Stephen Wacom, the fact that you all in the NHL officiating world are so out in front of the stakeholders, if it's general managers, if it's coaches, if it's players, you all are very present and visible, and you have a good discussion. And I think that respect within the league for what officials do and the purpose they serve it's really unique. And I love hearing so much about what you all do on the NHL or have done on the NHL side of things, because I think it just shows that respect goes a long way, and it's a two-way street, and there's open conversation. And like you said, it's not some mystery, like it's not behind the curtain at all. It's very out front. And I think that's ultimately good for the game. So love the insight on that. That was just absolutely outstanding.
One of the other things I might, if you don't mind me putting this in, is
absolutely.
How did we achieve?
We're here to listen.
How did we achieve building this team? And some little tricks we did, to develop the team was, first of all, as Nate brought up, we are one big team. The coaches, the managers, whatever you want to call the people who are looking after the administration and the coaching and the teaching, and the officials themselves. So one thing we did at each training camp, along with memos like that, was we would brand each season so that brand meant something only to our group. It didn't mean anything to anybody else. So this is just a simple thing, but like, for example, we make up little T-shirts with the brand on. Every memo we sent out all year long had the brand on. Every video we sent out had the brand on. We had brands like, "What will I do?" Okay, what that meant to each one of us was, what will I do to make myself a better teammate? Will I get my fitness better? Will I know the rules better? Will I understand the intent of the rule? And we had other ones, like one season, the whole group wasn't real good at taking charge of scrums when everybody comes together. So our slogan the next year was "Take Charge," and we talked about that. Here's another silly one, or not a silly one, but guys got a little sloppy at expenses. So one of the years we said, it's all about details. If I'm the manager and I got somebody's expense coming across my desk, I don't need that. There's more important things to do. So, even as a group, you could come up with some sayings, some little logos, and have fun with them, and they only mean something to your group. And I really felt that kind of helps bring your group together as well. And then it's all about communication after once the season starts, because as I said, 1,312 hockey games, you've got 100 people running all over North America. So now it comes down to memos. We would send out memos on Monday, and they might be a technical memo. So they would be about positioning, about sight lines, about signals. And then on the Thursday, we would send out more of a philosophical memo and like topics like hope versus courage. Okay, what's that mean? Well, that means you don't go out on the court or on the ice or on the field and hope things go well, because you go out on the ice with the courage to make the right call for the game. So that we talk about that type of stuff. Another one we used to talk about was the scientist versus the artist. You know, the scientist is that person who is very good at signals, very good at positioning, but has to learn the skill set about communicating at right times of the game, when to impose himself on the game, when to step back from the game. It's not about juggling the rules. It's about just having the right presence. So the artist inside us. So we'd talk about that all the time, and that gave good connectivity. We also had rules quizzes every week. We have a rules quiz. Everybody have to send in their answers. Then the guy who won at the end of the season, he got a big suite at training camp all to himself. He didn't have to have a roommate. So there was a lot of incentive in that one. But, you know, there were just other things. At one training camp, we said to the people, okay, how do you want to be evaluated? What do you feel are important skill sets in evaluation? And they came up with a really, really effective evaluation skill set list. And we took that and tried to incorporate it and did incorporate it into a lot of our things. So they had to take some ownership in how they were being evaluated. So that was just another method. You know, you give them some ownership in some aspect, then it's like, well, we're doing what you asked us to do. And I think then they see management responding, or if you want to call us management, and the officials. Now it's back and forth, and going back to Nate's part where we're all one big team.
Man, the collaboration on all of this, right? Just the fact that you're allowing the officials to kind of come up with their own evaluation system, and as a management team willing to implement these evaluations, just goes to show that teamwork, right? Again, it goes back to the trust in management, but it also shows that you're working for them and they're not just working for you.
Exactly.
Not only officials should be listening to this, but I mean, this is, I think, a method that you should take to corporate America, right? I think, you know, you take this to corporate America, you take this to restaurants, you take this to business offices, you know, state association offices within their organization. These are things that I think would improve workflow, would team morale. You know, because right now officiating, I think overall, the morale is kind of low at all levels. And I think, you know, we've taken so much into what our schedule looks like, and we forgot about all the little brands that we have to go through. Those brands are what create something that is bigger than us. We all want to be part of something that's bigger than us. And so when you come up with that brand at the start of the season, right, then that's something that I get to be a part of. I'm part of that team. I'm part of that brand. And it's a standard that I want to try to live by each and every day, you know, that I'm out on the ice or on the court or whatever the case may be. And so, man, just really good stuff. Terry, I know we talk about officials being the third team out there. You know, you got a home team, a visiting team, and you have the officials. What does the third team actually mean to you?
Well, the third team to me means that the players are out there, they're competing, they have wins and losses. What we have to do is we have to do the right thing for the game. And that's what the third team's job is to uphold the integrity of the game, do the right thing for the game, make sure that the environment stays fair, the environment stays safe. And, you know, another little buzzword that we used to use was competitive advantage. You know, like if somebody does something that isn't necessarily within the framework of the rule book, but they've gained a competitive advantage, you have to stop that as well. And so to me, the third team means you are representing the league that you are involved in. So therefore, you have to do the right thing for the game. It's not always well accepted. You're usually 50% wrong, no matter what they say. But at the same time, you have to do the right thing for the game. And that's what we feel that the officiating team has to do.
So, Terry, you talked a little bit about this already, but I'd like you to expand on it. So, in your role when you were the director of officials for the NHL, what were some of the things that you did to set up your team, the officiating staff, for success throughout the season?
First thing I did was I made sure that the managers were on board. We have a group of people who are, for the most part, ex-NHL officials, and they go around, they coach, they evaluate. They're my eyes and ears. They're the link between the officials and probably the team representative, that type of thing. So I used to, as I said earlier, we did memos, we do videos, we did funny videos. We did things sometimes where we would send out videos, hang them high, and we'd put all kinds of funny stuff in there. And, we just, sometimes you have to lighten the mood. As Nate was saying right now, a lot of officials are getting beat up. We needed to lighten the mood. We would also have a call of the month or something, and, we'd do stuff like that. And I remember I also built, being a science teacher, I built the periodic table, and I put in all different skill sets in there. And, we looked at it. What's important? What's less important? Where am I lacking? Where do I need to improve? And then we also went over and created pre and post game dialogues or discussions or questions that led to further discussion. If there was a manager present, they would lead the post or pre-game dialogue. If there wasn't, then each official would take a turn. It would be on the assignment sheet, and you might be the person that's only in the business 2 years and you're working with somebody that's 20 years, but it's your night to be the lead dog and lead this discussion. So, and all that type of stuff, and a lot of things would come out of that. And guys would phone me after a post-game discussion and say, hey, we're wondering about this. Is there a better way to do this? And then we'd try to figure out a better way, maybe a better sight line or something, and then we communicate to everybody. Here's what Joe Smo came up with last night, and we think it would be helpful to the whole team. Okay, so, and then people, once again, going back to ownership, people take pride in being part of the development as well. So those are a few things that I did when I was there.
I'm just curious. I mean, what was there training for you prior to? Did you go through some kind of coursework or something that kind of set you up to come up with these ideas? Or was this stuff just that you sat around, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're just like, you know what, this is a good idea to try to get my team it's very fascinating to me. That's why I asked the question.
Well, I think, Nate, I'm kind of from the school of common sense, and I believe you always treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't do. So when Stephen and I connected, Stephen is definitely more outside the box than I am. He would go way outside the box, and I'd bring him back maybe to closer to reality. And then we'd, have fun with it and see where we would go. But no, I mean, I was a science teacher. No, my education came just from watching and listening. I had the good opportunity to be part of many negotiations for collective bargaining. So you learn things there. It's just been, I've always been intrigued by education. So Stephen, as I said, Stephen deserves a lot of credit here because he's the outside the box thinker, and I would bring him back. So we were a good frickin' frack. Let's put it that way.
I love it. So yeah, I had to ask that. But Terry, what's important when we talk about mentorship, and we talk about mentorship in officiating all the time, but what is the importance of mentorship in the success of an officiating team?
Well, that's what I would consider a key ingredient in the education of officials. And when you talk to pro athletes, they always get asked, "Who was your mentor?" And it's an obvious question. I can name 3 people just off the top of my head that were my mentors, very simply. But it's the old line I once read. It said, "It's not what you learned in life, but what you taught." And when you do teach, I think I mentioned this to Ed the other day. I said, the greatest compliment I take is when someone says to me, "You told me 20 years ago to do." And I can't remember when I told him or if I told him, but he's crediting me with it. And I think that's a great compliment because that's your legacy. A big game and all that, it's a great moment, but your legacy is what you passed on. And I think that, first of all, when it comes to mentorship, not every official is a good mentor. Not every veteran official is a good mentor. Some people just don't communicate the way they have to. Then there's other mentors that need to be matched up with the proper mentee. There's some people who are maybe really good artists on the court, and they struggle with talking to the new official starting out because that's so far in the past for him, it's all dusty now. Whereas somebody who maybe never achieved as high a level in officiating might be really match up nicely with the young official because he would understand, the positioning and the work it takes to understand the rule type of thing. I think too often, though, in officiating, what I refer to as corporate intelligence, we let it walk out the door. Somebody finishes officiating and we say, well, thanks for your 42 years. We'll catch you later. Well, 42 years of experience and you're letting them walk out the door? Like there's got to be something. And we can talk about succession planning maybe a little later, but this is all part of it. Like it gives you value even towards the end of your career that you didn't have before. So I think that, and I think ex-officials are the people, for the most part, that you want as mentors, because I know myself was a lot easier to take advice and information from somebody that had skated in skates before than it was for somebody that had never been out there on skates in the middle of it. So it's the old, if somebody has walked in my shoes, I can probably take information from them a little bit easier. It's leadership. Mentoring is about leadership. And leadership, it's an action. It's not a position in my mind. So if I'm going to be a leader, I got to be a leader of action, not just I'm the leader, listen to me. So, I think you have to match the mentor. You have to educate the mentor too. Like just, give them some guidelines. Just like you're giving the officials direction and discipline on the standard of enforcement, give mentors some guidelines. Say, and maybe some ideas how to open up a conversation and that type of thing. But mentorship, I don't know anybody that ever attains the top level that can't sit down and say, well, these were my mentors, because you have to have them. I know I had to have them. There were a couple of times where you think this isn't going the direction I need, and you needed somebody to talk to.
You just said, I'm going to start calling you Professor Gregson, because I feel like you're teaching class here, man. That was amazing. And Nate and I talk a lot about mentorship, and we talk about that. We were just having a discussion on a previous podcast about it, that officiating mortality or immortality, you are living on through those people who you taught and who are doing the things that you maybe advised them, or doing something, doing a signal the way that maybe you did it. So as you retire, you have these people who are kind of your students and who listen to you and who carry that on. And you're right. There is no bigger compliment than somebody down the road saying, hey, you told me this once. And of course, half of us are like, I don't remember ever saying that, but hell, I'll go ahead and take credit for it. So I just think that's mentorship is so huge. And anybody who says that they got there on their own is lying, because everybody had to have somebody who's helped them up the ladder in some way. And honoring those mentors is so important, and keeping them involved. And even if they've walked away from the game and they're not active, making sure if you're a mentee that you're keeping in touch with those people who helped you, and letting them know where you are on your journeys, because that's meaningful to people who are mentors. It really is, to get that call of, oh, I got my first state championship or my first Stanley Cup game, or whatever the case may be. You want to know that. If it's somebody that you took under your wing, you absolutely want to know that. And don't ever feel like you're bragging. These are the people that you should brag to a little bit, because they're as proud of you as you are. So loved all of that. So Terry, you kind of started down this path, and now we're going to take you the rest of the way down. So off topic, sort of, but still kind of related to teamwork. The succession plan that the NHL has is absolutely fascinating to me, and you were obviously crucial in developing that plan. You had presented about this at an NASO summit years ago, and I've absolutely never forgotten that presentation, because I was just blown away. Can you talk about what that succession plan looks like, how it came to be, just everything you can tell us about it, because it is amazing?
Well, I retired from the ice in 2004, and last few years of my career, I saw some very good officials not really know when the end was there, and the problem with our job is when you start out, you have great feet and no head. And when you get a little further to near the end of your career, you have no legs, but you have a great head. Physically, it wears you out. But I saw a lot of people leave the game, and of course, it's management's right to let somebody go if they're maybe, falling behind a little bit. But I felt that there had to be a better way than that, because when you give 20, 25 years of your life to that, there needs to be a dignified exit, I felt. And so what I did was I told them a year and a half before I was retiring, and the first thing out of their mouth was, "Why would you tell us when you're retiring?" And I said, "Because I want to control my exit. I don't want the door hitting me in the rear end going out. I want to walk out the door." So, that's why I started to take a look at. You look at a career. You're amateur. You move through a career. You start out. You learn. You get better. You get bigger games. You get this. Then maybe physically, you're not serving the game as well as you should have because you can't get to the sight lines anymore. But you're still a valuable commodity. But you need to start talking about this. And so I thought that post-career or end of career is as much a part as the first and the middle, because you need to really know about that. So what I did was, when I started out, it was a little bit difficult because I was talking to all my peers about when are you going to retire, but I didn't frame it that way. We would start talking because everybody has it in their subconscious. When is this going to end? But you have to bring it to the conscious level and make them verbalize about it. So, I started talking about it. Probably we could look and say somebody has 3 to 4 to 5 years left. So we would start talking. And of course, they all figured they had 5 years left. But as you talk about it more and more, realism started to come into it. And they would, realize, they'd start to get little injuries because they're not getting out of the way the same, or things just you're not serving the game as well as you should. So over time, sure, there was a reluctance. But once we started to get this into place and people started to accept it and sign off on it, all of a sudden, their last year became a celebration. And now it's to the point nobody wants to miss out on that celebration because it's like a victory lap. Basically, we asked them, do you want 2 weeks off around Christmas? We accommodate them in any way we can. And we ask them where they want their last game, and it's usually about a month before the end of the season because we don't want to put them into a controversial situation in coming playoff time or something. And then we provide a box for them. They get to bring their families in for their final game. And the teams have absolutely embraced it amazingly too. The teams now give them team sweaters with their names on. And I don't know if you've seen it on TV, but the teams line up and shake their hands. And it's really something. So now it's gotten to the point where the people are saying, this is the one celebration I've got left in officiating, and I want to make sure I don't miss it. A couple of them unfortunately missed it during COVID, and you talk to them and they'll say, that's the one thing I missed out on was my last big party, And so I think at the amateur level, it can still be a celebration. It doesn't necessarily need to be in the high school gym or you maybe all get together at Pizza Hut, but it still means the same thing, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I just think as we've talked about, Dana, before at some of the conferences, I don't think we celebrate enough in the officiating world. And as Nate alluded to, we've been getting beat up in the last couple of years because of many things, social media, whatever. I think we need to celebrate a little more so that these people that are out there giving their heart and soul realize even when things wind down, there's something there for me, and there's a sense of appreciation. And then what happens is, I think a lot of these people, they'll maybe retire as a dignified exit, and then they become very good mentors. Whereas if you're chased out the door or told you're let go, it rattles your confidence. And so And then there's some of the corporate intelligence walking out the door.
I just had this conversation with an official who I think slightly feels that their exit is not what, they thought it should be, and I think that, we could have done, we can do a better job of maybe getting with these officials and finding out. But there's also a sense of some of these officials say they're going to retire, and especially at the amateur level.
Yeah.
And then they end up coming back, and then all that celebration was,
I think sometimes at the amateur level, there's a need.
Yeah,
at the professional
absolutely.
level, the need, there's always more talent, more this, more that. But I understand the need, but, maybe that person has to drop down a level or two to serve the game as well, because maybe it's a little slower, a little, and the mental side is fine. And, I guess, yeah, if you're going to have a celebration and they come back, well, you can't do much about it. But I'm sure other people will say, well, come on, you can't get two parties out of this, so whatever.
But I do think that some kind of plan needs to be implemented at the amateur, and it's a party. It's because part of that conversation was, I think a majority of officials, except what sounds like NHL, usually leave this game before they're ready to, or they're forced out of this game before they're ready to. And I think that's, for me, it's inevitable that one of these days my career is going to end before I was ready to say, okay, I'm done. And so I've already come to terms with that, and hopefully I go out gracefully. But, I just think that if more organizations took the time to come up with these plans, then, we might even get some early retirements, people that aren't forced out and they actually go out, on their own terms, which would be a phenomenal thing.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to take that presentation to a few different groups, and I have to say that usually after a year or two, I get some feedback that, you know what, it's in place, and we've had a couple of people make the move, and so that makes you feel good. And Dana, a few people that have headed up different organizations that have tapped into it, and I think it's working. Once again, it's not easy to talk to people about when it's winding down. But if you can add a celebration and maybe the fact they'll be a good mentor, maybe it eases the fall.
I just love the fact that they get some say-so in like what that last year looks like for them. And I think that's something so different from officiating, because officiating, you get the game that you're assigned, you go work and you go home. And I think being able to be like, yeah, I really want to call at Pittsburgh, or, whatever the case may be, and having your family there. And for people who have made a career of kind of being behind the scenes, you're not the player, you're not getting all the accolades. So to have something that's specific for them, and I have seen games when they do those ceremonies and having the teams there cheering for them and everything, it's just so special. And I think that we need to do a better job of honoring those people that have served the game and served it well and are going to make great mentors or evaluators or whatever it is and whatever level that you're at, because they still can serve the game, but maybe their knees are shot. They can't keep up with 19-year-old skating. Like there's so many different ways to keep them involved. But in order to do that, you have to give them the ability to exit gracefully. And that's not always the case. So that's why when you had given the speech at NASO about the succession plan, I was just like, holy cow, this is the right way to do it. This is the right way to honor and let these people retire respectfully, instead of just kind of giving them the bum's rush out the door, because no one wants that at any level. It's disrespectful to what they've done and how they've served.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that, Terry. I love hearing about that. And I don't know how many people knew about it. That's why I was like, that's something the listeners definitely need to hear.
All right. So we're on to our final question, Terry. And from the A to Zebra podcast, we have a mission every week, and that's to educate, elevate, and excite our listeners. What can you tell us about officiating that accomplishes?
Well, I think that one thing that I think you mentioned earlier, Nate, was the skill set that one develops in officiating is a very far-reaching one. It's about time management. It's about judgment. It's about communication. It's about emotional control. There's so many transferable skills. I think that's phenomenal. quite often I'll get a call and they want me to come and speak to them. And there's always somebody saying, I wonder what he can speak to me about. And I'm talking to a bunch of life insurance management people. But you get there, you start talking about building teams, you start talking about things, and they get it after a while. I think that one of the beauties of officiating is you build wonderful life skills. A second thing is it's a lifetime of learning. You know, and I know that even when I did my last game, there was something I learned about the rule book or about the game that I didn't know in game 1, and now I'm at game 1500 or whatever. So I like the lifetime learning. But I think another thing I always like to tell a young official is know the rules. Okay. You have to know the rules to get started. But you have to understand the spirit and the intent of the rule. The spirit is basically the purpose. So is it for fairness, or is it for safety, or is it so someone doesn't gain a competitive advantage? And then the intent of the rule is, how do we uphold that criteria? So in hockey, we have a rule called hooking, okay? So the spirit of the rule is you can't use your stick to slow the person down, okay? That's the spirit. The intent of the rule, though, is like we have to give them clues to make sure that it isn't just a touch, that there's a tug, that there's a restraint, there's a consequence to the action. So I think that's where the artist and scientist comes in. The scientist sees and reacts. The artist processes in a very quick, like microsecond, but he processes the action. So know the rules, have a good understanding of the rules. But I'll be honest with you. When I was refereeing a hockey game, I couldn't have told you Rule 61 from Rule 52. I had no clue. But I knew when I saw something that was unsafe, I'd call it. And the player would say, what's that for? I might even say to him, I don't know what it's for, but it isn't going to happen again. I'll figure it out by the time I get to the penalty box. And you know what? Over time, they trust you because you have a good understanding of fairness, of safety, and of competitive advantage. So I used to always just say those 3 things over and over and over again during a game. Fair, safe, unfair, bang. You know, that's the way I used to go. So, you know, I think as a group, you have to develop the standard, and then it's incumbent upon the group to educate, less me, more we, and be committed for doing things for the good of the team and the good of the game. That would be my takeaway.
Man, Terry, I cannot tell you how honored we are to have you on this show. Like, this has been incredible. Anybody who's listening, if you didn't have a notebook, get one and listen to this all over again, because this was just unbelievable. I've known you for a long time, Terry, and every time I talk to you, I learned something. And every time I talk to you, I'm better because of it. So I can't thank you enough for what you do and the person you are, and the fact that your wisdom transcends a sport. You're not just a hockey guy. You're, holy cow. I mean, you got it. Whatever it is, you got loads of it. And I'm just so honored to know you and to call you a friend and to have you on this podcast, because people who are listening to this, they're getting better too. So thank you so much. It's a absolute joy.
Well, thanks for having me, Nate and Dana. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Terry, and thank you for joining us. And again, I just want to echo, everything that Dana said, and thank you for just being an advocate for officials and not only hockey, but all sports. Thank you for joining us today on the From A to Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X for more information about the show. Until next time.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook, From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.